Most of the damage done to Toyota engines doesn't happen on the highway. It happens in driveways, in parking lots, in the 30 seconds before you even pull out, done by people who'd swear up and down they take perfect care of their car. And that's exactly why it's so hard to catch. See, a Toyota doesn't break the way other cars break. It won't punish you today. It just quietly remembers. Every shortcut, every helpful habit, every little thing you do that feels smart, the engine files it away and then hands you the bill years later, usually right when you thought you were in the clear. The people who design these engines know this better than anyone. They've torn down enough high-mileage motors to see the same fingerprints over and over, and almost none of them come from neglect. They come from drivers trying to help. So I asked a simple question. If a Toyota engineer could grab you by the shoulders and get you to stop doing just a handful of things, what would they pick? Turns out the list is shorter than you'd think, and a lot more familiar. You're probably guilty of at least 3 of these without even realizing it. Let's get into it. Mistake number 1, squeezing in extra gas after the pump clicks off. You've done this. The nozzle clicks, the pump stops, and you give it a few more little squeezes to round it up to a clean number, or just to top it off so you can go a little longer between fill-ups. Feels harmless, feels almost smart. It's one of the things Toyota engineers wish people understood, because that gas tank isn't just an open bucket. When the pump clicks off, that's not a suggestion. That's the tank telling you it's full. Everything above that point is reserved space, on purpose for fuel vapor to expand. Behind that is a part most drivers have never heard of, the charcoal canister. Its whole job is to catch fuel vapor and feed it back into the engine so it doesn't vent out into the air. Vapor, not liquid. When you force those extra squeezes in, you push raw liquid gasoline up into a system that was only ever built to handle vapor. Saturate that canister and it stops working the way it should. Now you've got a check engine light, a car that's hard to start, sometimes a faint gas smell, and a repair that's a lot more than the dollar of fuel you were trying to round up. So the fix costs you nothing. When the pump clicks off, you're done. That's it. Hang the nozzle up and drive away. Your Toyota was telling you it was full. The smartest thing you can do is actually listen. Mistake number 2, shifting between reverse and drive before the car fully stops. Picture the 3-point turn or backing out of a tight spot. You're rolling backward, you're almost there, and to save half a second, you drop it into drive while the car's still creeping. Or the reverse, still easing forward, and you yank it into reverse to back up. Smooth, quick, no big deal. Your transmission strongly disagrees. Here's what's happening in that half second. The whole car is moving one direction, and you've just told the drivetrain to grab and pull it the other way. Instantly. That momentum has to go somewhere. So it slams through the transmission, the mounts, the axles, the little parking pawl that was never designed to be a brake. Nothing snaps the first time. It just takes a hit, a small one you'll never feel. That's exactly why engineers can't stand it. There's no warning light for "you did this 4,000 times." It just shows up later as sloppy, clunky shifts, worn mounts, and a transmission that feels tired way before it should, on a car that was built to outlast almost everything else on the road. And the fix is the most boring thing in the world. Come to a full stop, a real, complete dead stop, then move the shifter. It costs you maybe 1 extra second per turn. In exchange, the most expensive component in your Toyota gets to live the long, easy life it was engineered for. Mistake number 3, always running the tank down near empty. Some people treat the low fuel light like a personal challenge. 15 miles to empty, 20, let's see how far we can push it. Or they just never fill up past a quarter tank. Top up a little, run it down, top up a little. Saves a trip, gets you to payday. Totally normal habit. The part nobody tells you is what that does to the pump. Your fuel pump lives inside the tank, sitting down in the gasoline. And that fuel isn't just there to feed the engine. It's also what keeps the pump cool and lubricated while it runs. So when the tank's full, the pump is happy, surrounded, cooled, protected. When you're constantly running on fumes, that pump is left half exposed, working hot, with nothing to keep its temperature down. Then there's the bottom of the tank. That's where every bit of sediment and gunk eventually settles. Run the level low enough, often enough, and the pump starts sipping from that layer, pulling in the debris it was supposed to stay above. Engineers see the result on the bench. Pumps that wore out years early, strainers choked with grit, all from a car that was barely driven hard. So the habit to build is almost embarrassingly simple. Treat a quarter tank like your new empty. When the needle hits a quarter, you fill up. The pump stays cool, stays clean, stays submerged in what's basically its own cooling system. And a part most people never think about quietly lasts the life of the car. Mistake number 4. Topping off the coolant with whatever's on the shelf. This one almost always comes from a good place. You pop the hood, notice the coolant's a little low, and you do the responsible thing. Grab a jug of antifreeze from the garage, or that universal green stuff from the parts store, splash some in, done. Or you're in a pinch and just add water to get the level back up. Felt like good ownership. That's the trap. The damage hides behind good intentions. Toyota doesn't run on generic coolant. It runs on its own specific formula, the pink stuff. And it's not pink just to look nice. The additive package in there is built to protect all the aluminum your engine is full of. The block, the heads, the water pump, the radiator. The bright green universal coolant uses a completely different chemistry. Pour that in next to Toyota's, and the two don't just mix and get along. They can react, turn into a gel, and start sludging up the very passages that are supposed to keep your engine cool. And plain water? That dilutes whatever protection was left, drops the boiling point, and invites corrosion right where you least want it. Engineers see the aftermath as a clogged radiator, a heater that won't heat, a water pump worn out long before its time, all from a top-off that took 30 seconds and felt like a favor to the car. So the rule is simple: match what's already in there. Use Toyota's coolant or one clearly marked as compatible with its spec, and never blend two different types. If you're truly stranded and water is all you've got to get home, fine. But treat it as a get-me-home move and flush it properly after. Your cooling system is one of the few things standing between you and a warped engine. It's worth using the right stuff. Mistake number 5, taking speed bumps and potholes at full speed. This one barely registers as a mistake. You're running late, there's a speed bump, and slowing all the way down feels like a waste. So you keep your speed and just absorb it. Or you spot a pothole half a second too late and bang straight through it. A little jolt, the car keeps going, no harm done, right? The problem is where that jolt goes. Your suspension is genuinely impressive engineering. It soaks up bumps so you barely feel them, and that smoothness fools people into thinking nothing's happening. But every hard hit you take at speed slams a shock load through the whole system. The struts, the bushings, the ball joints, the wheel bearings, the tie rods. Those parts are tough, but they were tuned to cushion bumps, not to repeatedly take a hammer blow. Hit them hard enough, often enough, and they start to give. That's what makes engineers cringe, because none of it fails loudly. It shows up slowly. A clunk over bumps that wasn't there before. An alignment that keeps drifting, quietly chewing the inside edge off your tires. A bent rim you never noticed. A wheel bearing that starts to hum. A pile of small repairs, all from impacts you could have rolled over gently. So the fix is just lifting off the gas. See a speed bump, ease down and crawl over it. Spot a pothole you can't avoid, brake before you reach it, and let the wheel roll through instead of slamming in at speed. A few seconds of patience and the part of your Toyota that keeps it planted and tight gets to stay that way for the long haul. Mistake number 6, riding the brakes the whole way down a long hill. This one actually feels like the careful thing to do. Long descent, steep grade, and you want to stay in control. So you keep steady pressure on the brake pedal the entire way down, holding your speed in check. Feels responsible, feels safe. It's also slowly cooking your brakes. Brakes work by turning motion into heat. A quick stop? No problem. That heat comes and goes. But hold them down for a solid mile of descent, and there's nowhere for all that heat to escape. It just keeps building. The pads and rotors get blazing hot, and once they pass a certain point, they stop biting the way they should. That's brake fade, the terrifying moment near the bottom of the hill where you press the pedal and the car just doesn't slow like it used to. And the heat doesn't only fade your stopping power, it can warp the rotors, leaving you with that pulsing shudder through the pedal every time you brake. It can glaze the pads. It can even boil the brake fluid, especially if it's a little old. And boiled fluid means a soft, sinking pedal. Engineers hate seeing it because the whole time, the car had a second set of brakes you weren't using. That second set is the engine. Going down a long grade, drop into a lower gear, slide the shifter into the lower range, or S, or B if your Toyota has it, and let the engine hold you back instead of the brake pads. Then just tap the brakes now and then for fine control rather than leaning on them the whole way. Your speed stays in check, the brakes stay cool, and the part that has to stop you at the bottom of the hill is fresh and ready when you actually need it. Mistake number 7. Ignoring a warning light because the car still drives fine. This is the one that quietly costs people the most, and almost everybody's guilty of it at some point. A light pops up on the dash. Maybe it's the check engine light, maybe something you don't even recognize, but the car still starts, still drives, still feels completely normal. So you do the human thing. You tell yourself it's probably nothing. You'll deal with it later. And later turns into weeks, then months of just driving with it on. Some people go a step further and clear the light themselves or get it reset and feel like the problem's handled because the dash looks clean again. Here's what engineers desperately want you to understand. That light isn't the problem. It's the warning about the problem. And it's usually the cheapest moment you will ever have to fix it. Think about what's actually happening under there. Your Toyota is monitoring itself constantly. Dozens of sensors watching fuel, air, temperature, emissions, pressure, all of it. When something drifts out of range, the car doesn't wait until it's a disaster to speak up. It tells you early, while the issue is still small and still cheap. That check engine light could be something as silly as a loose gas cap, but it could also be a tiny misfire. And a misfire you ignore starts dumping unburned fuel into your exhaust, slowly cooking the catalytic converter. The loose cap fix is basically free. The catalytic converter it can destroy if you keep driving. That's one of the most expensive parts on the whole car. And some lights are not later lights at all. The oil pressure light, the temperature warning, those mean stop now. Keep driving with the oil light on, and you can turn a reliable engine into scrap metal in a matter of minutes. The car is no longer giving you a heads up, it's begging you to pull over. The worst move of all is clearing the code without fixing anything. That doesn't solve the problem. It just unplugs the smoke alarm while the fire's still burning. The car will go quiet for a while and let the real damage grow in the dark until it comes back as something far bigger and far more expensive. So the habit here is simple, and it might be the most valuable one on this whole list. When a new light comes on, find out what it means soon. A check engine light can get scanned for free at most parts stores in about 5 minutes. Small lights, get them looked at in the next few days. The serious ones, oil, temperature, you stop and deal with right then. Don't reset it, don't outweight it. Don't assume a car that drives fine is fine. Your Toyota is one of the few cars on the road honest enough to warn you early. The least you can do is listen. So if you made it this far, here's the real takeaway. Your Toyota isn't fragile. It's one of the toughest, most overbuilt machines you'll ever own. And the only thing standing between it and 300,000 miles is the handful of little habits we just walked through. Drop those and you're not driving a car that might last. You're driving one that's almost trying to. That's exactly what this channel is built for. Here on All About Toyota, we go past the surface level stuff and get into what actually keeps these trucks, SUVs, and sedans alive for the long haul, the mistakes to avoid, the smart moves most owners never hear about, and the real reasons these things refuse to die. So if even one of these 7 made you go, wait, I do that, then you already know there's more you'll want to catch. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell so the next one finds you, and drop a comment telling me which mistake you've been guilty of. I read them, and honestly, the answers are half the fun. Take care of your Toyota, and it'll take care of you. I'll see you in the next one.